And we'll start with you, Henry. Housing affordability question. What would you do to make housing more affordable for the residents of your district, and be specific?
Okay, so the true definition of affordable housing, guys, is 30% of your gross income. And if you look at the average income of the constituents in our district, it's about $50,000. So you're realistically talking about $1,200 a month. Now, we all know you're not going to put a family in a 2- or 3-bedroom house for $1,200, $1,300 a month in this city. So through the implementation of my Universal Civilian Service Program, anybody who volunteers for this program would have the same eligibility rights that the current VA housing system has. I'd also look for some grants and opening up opportunity in green zones to all new development, as long as they adhere to specific guidelines, making those houses sustainable and affordable.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you. This is a really important question, especially for California, as has been mentioned. People are leaving California for less expensive places to live. So at the federal level, the federal government is probably doing a pretty decent job of staying out of the way of housing affordability. The problem is here in California, state regulations, local regulations, fees, taxes, permitting, and of course CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. And as many of you know that have built homes, developed homes, or been in that process, delaying a project makes the project more expensive. So we've got regional water quality control issues that are happening as well. So currently in Sacramento, I'm working with the authors of CD50 that just recently failed to make sure we come back with a product, a bill that is applicable across the state, that the local jurisdictions can support, and returns local control to our cities. We're going to do the best job of zoning and promoting development. So we're working on it.
Congressman.
Well, I think the state senator said it pretty well. The problem in California is in California. But there's no question at all, the federal government has certain areas historically that have been part of the problem. We have a strong tendency to engage, if you will, in rules that don't have funding behind them, and then California takes them further. We also have the question of the consistency of the availability of low-cost funds. And that's an area that I think we in the federal government need to stay on top of, making sure that there's an abundance of funds available for those who want to buy homes or make investments in other people's homes. Saying that, though, it is California's challenge, and California must meet the challenge, and today they're not, and I think the state senator is exactly right. We need Sacramento to do their job.
Thank you.
One of the things I've researched is the Low-Income Housing Commission. There's a lot of fraud in the federal government with regard to housing. People don't want low-income housing in their neighborhoods, but as everyone has said, low income nowadays is about $50,000. And so affordability is another issue. I work with Omar Passins and also David Estrada in the past, because I'm promoted by Supervisor Jacobs into a position that gives me that network. And so we want to work collaboratively with all Board of Supervisors staff, county members, and also the realtors to find solutions to these issues. And so one of the things that I would like to see is addressing low-income housing affordability through grants and things like that, instead of giving tax breaks to larger corporations to develop more buildings outside of the realm of need.
Thank you.
I will just tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what I've done already. I've defeated $3 billion in tax increases in the last 13 years. 1/3 of those tax increases, by the way, were property tax increases. We are still working on defeating a $56 billion tax hike, repealing the gas tax with a proper title and summary of the bill. I've cut water rates. I've cut water rates through pension reform, $138 million for homeowners in the city of San Diego since 2012. But what am I going to do next? We're going to fight Prop 13's repeal the split roll initiative in November, because don't make any mistake about it, they're not going to end with the industrial and commercial properties. They're coming after single-family residential. I'm going to fight to make sure that our gas tax monies actually go into infrastructure to support housing projects. I'm going to lead the effort, as I'm doing right now, against restrictive mandates being imposed at the ballot box by defeating Measure A on this year's ballot. And finally, in Washington, we're going to lift the SALT cap to give a little bit of tax relief for our mortgage payers in the state of California.
Thank you, Carl.
So California is the richest and poorest state in our union. And a large part of that is because of housing. In San Diego alone, 30% of renters pay every month 50% of their income. And I've talked to realtors who tell me it's a matter of inventory, and that's a very valid concern. So we have to start building, we have to cut through red tape and allow more building of housing. It's really critically important that we do that throughout our county and throughout our state. One of the things I want to make sure that we do that really frustrates me is that California is the #1 biggest funder of our federal taxes. We don't get out of the system what we put into it. We're 20th in HUD funding and 4th in terms of our homeless population. 2nd in terms of our veteran homeless population. We need to see our own federal dollars come back to us. And then we will stand up to President Donald Trump and repeal the state and local tax deductions. We'll make sure that you have your state and local tax deductions back for those people who are getting their marriage penalties and everything else. I don't know why you do that number when you put it in my sentence. And then give tax cuts for renters and make sure people could refinance their homes and a whole host of issues. Make sure the CFPB can allow responsible buyers, qualified buyers to get access to capital. And make sure that we have the mortgage debt forgiveness tax again reinstated now. So.
The next question is also about housing. It's come up in this campaign. Should it matter to voters whether congressional leaders live in the district? Tell us yes or no, and please explain why. And you get to it first.
Yeah, I think you ought to live in the district you're trying to serve. You should be able to vote in the district you're asking people to vote for you. That's why when I get to Congress to have a government reform bill, overturning Citizens United, getting big money out of politics, live where you serve act. I think these small things would allow us to make things happen. I know my opponents are going to say in 2022 that districts will change, but I don't think you get to just pick a district because it's convenient for you politically or you couldn't stomach the ability to serve your district. I lost this seat when nearly half the voters voted for me in this district. I didn't give up on them. My mom taught me better than that. You fight for the people that you believe in, the people you grew up with. And I'm tired of politicians picking the voters and not voters picking their politicians.
Well, I think every single issue is going to be weighed in this campaign, and the #1 issue I think voters are looking for is someone who's going to be genuine on their positions, someone who's going to be dogged in their fight to advance those positions. They're sick and tired of career politicians that sell out. There is no address associated with sellouts. There is no address associated with fighters. The voters are looking for a fighter, not a quitter and a sellout. Let me also say, when I recalled State Senator Josh Newman from San Diego, people said, well, why are you going up to Orange County? Why don't you pick on one of your own state senators? And I said, you know, the politicians don't see the light until they feel the heat. And the only language they understand is when one of them loses their job. He cast the deciding vote on the gas tax and the car tax. He cast the deciding vote on the Sanctuary State Initiative. And he needed to be recalled from office, and we did it. The 5th successful recall of a state official in 104 years. We did it with no help from the institutional career politicians.
Thank you, Carl.
Including someone on this stage, with the exception of Brian Jones. Thank you for helping us with that, Brian.
So someone asked me, what would I say if someone was misbehaving on this dais? And I'm saying, I have experienced issues in this campaign. I have gone to, I live in the 50th First. I've lived in Alpine since 2003. And I'm a strong supporter of the community. But when you hear people on this dais saying, oh yeah, I support this and I support that, but they're not going to the events. I've gone to Kumeyaay events consistently to support the Native American community. I go to veterans events. I go out and I actually broke my nose. I met the road and infrastructure issue campaigning. And so I know the community. And you need someone that understands the community, that lives there, and has a handle on the issues. not someone who goes over their time in this forum. So I'm going to leave that alone and let you decide. But
Certainly, you're out of time.
yes, well, that's
Congressman,
I've already voted for myself in this district for my home in Bonsall. I've owned that home for more than 15 years. When the redistricting occurred, I certainly could have been in the 50th. More than a third of the 50th Congressional District was already in my historic district of 12 years at that point. I made a decision that I would take the less good seat. Young Duncan Hunter could take the better seat, and Brian Bilbray took the least good seat. Each of us could have justified a different seat. So I've never been somebody who went out and said, I'm going to take a better seat because it's there. I could have done that in 2012, and nobody would have been able to say anything. But no, I don't believe you need to live in the district. But like was just said, you need to have your heart in the district, your history in the district, your willingness to visit and to do the things to serve the people in the district. Thank you.
My family moved to Santee in 1978 when I was 10 years old. My dad was a home builder in Colorado, and we came out here on vacation, and at that point in time, California was the Golden State, the land of opportunity, and was growing at rapid rates. Just as on a whim, he applied for 10 different jobs while we were here on vacation and was offered 12 different opportunities because things were happening at such a rapid rate. I've lived in this district for over 40 years. I've represented this district almost 20, if you count my time on the Santee City Council, 6 years in the Assembly, and now a year and a half in the Senate. I know this district. This district knows me. They know the voters last year when they overwhelmingly elected me to the state Senate knew what they were getting based on my voting record, my conservative, faith-based, family-oriented, freedom, liberty, voting record in Sacramento, and that's the expectations that this district has for Washington, D.C. This is one of the most, thank you.
The simple answer is absolutely. I looked through the offices for everything in California, federally. This is the only office you can run for without living in the district, by the way. I do want to address a couple things. So, I'm a transplant. I'm not originally from San Diego. I've lived here 12 years over 6 periods of time. So something keeps pulling me back to this city. It's wonderful. All of you guys are real estate agents or involved in real estate. And without people moving from other places to this city, you don't have a lot of business. We don't have a 50th district. This is all dictated by population. So being born here or living here your entire life isn't some qualifying factor for being a representative of a specific district. So we just got to put that to rest. Yeah, you're right. You might have a different district. The odds are we're going to lose a district in California, and more than likely, it's going to end up being gerrymandered because the conservatives still run the books. So we got to look at changing those laws.
thank you. Next question, and we'll stay with you, Henry, is on homelessness. More than half of all unsheltered homeless people in the country live in California. And the Trump administration has suggested the federal government will soon take a much greater role in addressing this issue. What should the role of the U.S. government be to deal with homelessness? And what would your specific approach be as a member of Congress?
Okay, so the reality is the homeless population, the people living on the streets, is 5 states. It's California, Texas, Washington, New York, and Florida. Again, I have one goal, that is to end homelessness in America in 2 years. That would work through the implementation of the Universal Civilian Service Program. Being on the street is not an option. The first step we take is we open up the mental health facilities that were closed down in the late 80s and early 90s. We fully fund and operate those. Anybody who's caught on the street ends up at one of these facilities for a 90-day probationary period where we can do an evaluation and see what kind of cognitive resources they have. Everybody has the ability to get back to this country. So if we start with the homeless population, removing them from the streets, and providing jobs and housing for them, we will stem off the people who are not homeless now. The 37-year-old lady who's about to lose her job, the 14-year-old kid who's going to turn to drugs. Those people will end up being homeless if we stick with the status quo. We need to take bold changes, guys.
Senator.
Thank you very much. The federal government's role in the homelessness issue, I think, is very limited. So let's really, before I come back to that, let's talk about the failure of Sacramento under the Democratic leadership from the Bay Area. One of the things that the governor and the leaders in the Democratic Party don't understand in California is the easier you make it to be homeless, the more homeless you're going to get. Thank you. I said, duh, right? And so that's one of the things I'm, continuously fighting up in Sacramento now. My staff currently, even today, is researching a package of bills that will be unrolling hopefully next week, and just a limited number of bills to address some specific challenges with homelessness. But what can the federal government do? To be honest with you, I like Donald Trump's idea of taking the EPA and going after cities like San Francisco that are allowing this environmental crisis and this health crisis to happen under their watch, and have the EPA come in with sanctions and penalties. And you know what? We need to do that up and down the state. To every city that allows this problem to grow, the federal government has a role through the EPA and the health departments to come in and including sanctions and prosecution of the
Congressman.
Thank you. Well, since President Trump's name was mentioned, President Trump has been engaged in this issue. He has sent Ben Carson out, the secretary, who actually was here yesterday and was working with Interfaith and other organizations. He sent the CEO of, his name is Ralph Gaines, he's Ben Carson's #1 on this issue many times. But I think let's just look at it from a standpoint of not what the federal government could do, because the federal government is there to help the cities and the state. But here in San Diego, our mayor has proven that, in fact, he can do a better job than they're doing in Los Angeles and San Francisco by actually trying to cure it, to fix it, and to work with the organizations that are there, both faith-based and non-faith-based. So I think when we look at the first thing we have to do is stop going the wrong way, which is what San Francisco and LA are doing, and start at least working with the federal government. The hand will be out from the federal government, but you've got to be willing to take their help the way Mayor Faulkner has.
That's a minute, but I just want to ask a quick follow-up, because I think there was a specific proposal from you. What would you do as a congressman to help the homeless situation?
I would continue to make money available to the organizations like Solutions for Change and others that take people and transition them from not able to earn enough to live in a home, or not able to understand the rules that will keep you in a home, and get them out of that. Now, in some cases, you need to deal with drug addiction. In some cases, you need to be on medication that you're not taking. But in many cases, it is tools